Welcome to X-Men Evolution, episode 16 of Cyclops is Waiting for Me, an X-Men animated recap podcast. I'm Rod. This is the second time I've said episode 16, even though you guys didn't hear the first one, because we changed plans with another episode.
And I'm JC, and I just want to take a moment to thank again Stephen E. Gordon, who was on our last episode, Bada Bing, Bada Boom, shared a ton of amazing insight around X-Men Evolution. Cyclops is Waiting for Me is our weekly podcast series. We're going back and watching every single X-Men animated episode that we can find, along with some bonus episodes. Our first series started with the original X-Men the Animated Series, building up to the release of X-Men 97, which we thought was coming to Disney Plus in 2023. To date the podcast, when we're recording, it is right after New York Comic Con has concluded. And Rod, did you see the spoiler that came out of New York Comic Con?
I did not. Was there actually a date post?
No, It was a Funko Pop.
Oh, did I see that? Did you post something about that?
I did not. Our friend Kevin posted, there is a Madeline Pryor, aka the Goblin Queen, Funko Pop. And It's labeled as X-Men 97, not just a generic X-Men one.
Okay.
So that means we're going to get a certain story for the people who know what it is, most likely in X-Men 97. Rod, you're lucky you don't know who that is, really.
Yeah, I've only heard you and a couple of the guests mention her, and it has something to do with Scott, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that. And I saw at Target, they had the bigger size 97 action figures that are more along the lines of the regular figure size.
The legend size, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, I hope I'm not rubbing you the wrong way here, but I wasn't too impressed, especially for being almost $30.
I feel like action figures blew up in price at a higher rate than inflation, which is wild.
Yeah.
You kind of compare it to things that were on the dollar menu 20 years ago, and maybe those things are $2.50 to $3 now. This went from a $5 toy to a $30 toy. That's absurd.
Yeah, because I guess so when the Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem movie came out, it stirred this nostalgia in me. So I went and bought some. They reissued the old figures, and I bought. I want to say an action figure that cost me $5 to $10 when I was a kid. I think I bought for $15. That kind of made sense to me.
It had to be the $5. There was definitely not something you were getting for $10 that is only up to $15 now.
Yeah, it's hard to remember because I was so young, but it was one of those ones that transformed, so I couldn't remember if it was on the more expensive end or the cheaper end, or maybe in between or something. But
right. It was maybe that was $8 or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it made more sense to maybe $20 or something for something like that. But I saw that Wolverine action figure, and the only quote unquote action he had was you could change his head or put the cowl on his regular head. I don't know why both those options were there, but it was $20. I was that is wild. But I guess that's probably meant to just sit on a shelf in the blister pack.
I don't know. I have too many figures at this point, so I cannot do the investment into more lines of X-Men figures. The VHS set is enough for me right now. I will buy more VHS sets if they do those, but I can't do every line of X-Men 97. I was sharing on our Instagram, Mondo released the Omega Red, which, I mean, that thing was $270 or something. Jeez. Because Mondo is absurd.
Yeah. Anyway, some quick reminders. We're a recap show about a series that started over 20 years ago. There will be spoilers. If you don't want spoiled for you, pause the podcast, watch the episode, and come back. We are currently not sponsored or affiliated with Marvel Animation, Disney, or Disney Plus in any way.
And don't forget to follow us on social media at Cyclops IWFM Pod on Instagram, TikTok, Threads. I'm going to still call it Twitter until that person burns to the ground, and Facebook. And of course, make sure to follow us on your favorite podcast service and give us a rating if you feel nice enough to do so.
Yes, please. Now onto the show. Today we're going to be talking about Season 2, Episode 3, titled Power Surge. It aired October 13th. Oh, wow. Okay. 2001, and currently since has 7.4 star rating on IMDb. I just say that because it's also Friday. Well, I didn't say Friday. It was October 13th recently here too, so we're starting to sync up.
Oh yeah, timing. That's oddly close. Yeah, we're recording on the 16th, so that's a weird vibe.
Oh, also, I think, well, this is probably way after, but if you came here from this Probably Not Aliens podcast, welcome. This is vastly different than that, but I feel like it's a good overlap of fan bases. I had a great time doing basically what I do here, not knowing what I'm talking about, and having someone else explain. Tristan, great, very patient man who was trying to explain a lot of history to me, and I was asking a lot of dumb questions. So it's a very good teacher. Also, go check out his channel, Step Back History, because he can teach me, he can teach you.
Make sure to remind me, and we will put a link in the description to give them some love back for having you on their show.
Yeah, this episode episode was called Power Surge. Without going to too much spoilers, I feel like there was like a surge protector on this episode. I wasn't disappointed, but based on the thumbnail and the description, I thought this was going to be a lot more.
Yeah, the thumbnail gave me Scarlet Witch vibes.
Yeah.
Or full-fledged Dark Phoenix vibes.
I thought we were at least going to see the start of the Phoenix, or maybe we did. And so, anyway, before we get into any spoilers.
No, there's no spoilers of the episode. We've gone out of order before, sir. I'm not concerned about that.
We might be out of order now, right? Because Steven said that he was every third episode, but the airing order might be out of whack, and nobody's really sure right now.
Right, and this one would make sense to be the second episode, considering the first one ended with that soccer championship game. I could see it go either way, so...
I guess it was vague enough, that this could be... That last episode could have happened whenever, but yeah, so speaking of, this one opens up at a convocation at the school auditorium because the girls had like a winning soccer season and Jean is getting presented with her award for MVP. And then in the audience, I was able to find out through the captions that British girl we met the first episode was Risty. I made sure to read it several times because, these captions have typos in them all the time.
They're about as good as our TikTok captions, yeah.
And it said it over and over again, and I'm pretty sure that's what all the other characters said, so...
Yeah, it is Risty with an R, no doubt.
Yeah.
I don't know why Jean was shocked that she was given the MVP trophy.
Yeah, because they would...
Because she acted genuinely surprised.
I feel like that's kind of like when Taylor Swift wins a Grammy, right? She's like, oh my God, really? Me? He's like, yeah, you were like one of 3 artists that sold like music in this year, like at a measurable rate, She's like, oh, I only scored more goals than the rest of the team combined. I got MVP? Really? Or she's just used to having to act surprised because she's a literal psychic. As we see with this episode, I guess maybe not before, because she starts to give her acceptance speech, and the first thought she hears are Rogue's.
Yeah, because Risty's like, yeah, aren't you gonna like be happy for your friend? And Rogue says something to Risty, and then she's like, saying, talking shit in her head, and Jean hears it clearly, which I don't think we've seen so far in Evolution yet.
Yeah. So they're kind of introducing it here, which I have to keep reminding myself. These kids are in high school, so not exactly our late puberty age or anything, but like still a lot of things are developing, especially superpowers. And so she hears her thoughts at first, and then Rogue is like, why are you looking at me? And then she starts hearing, like, she hears Scott's voice say, like, be calm, just get through this, and then just systematically through everyone else she knows, and then some other people that we don't know, but presumably Jean knows of, at least, like other strangers in the crowd and stuff.
Like you get Scott and Kurt being supportive. You get Spike and Kitty, who are kind of like what's going on? She's kind of tanking, and then it jumps over to like randoms who are just like, oh, she sucks. Like, yeah. she's having a breakdown.
So she gets really overwhelmed by all the voices. This kind of reminds me, if there's anybody who remembers that show Heroes, my favorite character on there was Matthew Parkman, because...
Oh, the guy who I hated in Star Wars, yeah.
Oh, I forgot. Is he in Star Wars? Yeah, I guess he's an anything J.J. Abrams director,
yep.
Right? Yeah.
They do kill him, so it's okay.
Okay. Well, that's it. He's usually like, besides Heroes, he's usually like a bit part that comes in and out in J.J.'s stuff. And so and Heroes was JJ adjacent, I guess, because there was like that slush show stuff and things in there. Anyway, he was my favorite character because he had the power that I thought I wanted until they like started showing how it kind of works. Like, oh, I'd want to be able to read people's minds, and he's like, you don't want to hear what people are thinking all the time.
No, it starts to suck a lot.
And it reminds me of a scene where he got overwhelmed as well, except Jean has the potential of the Phoenix in the, not in this series yet, but like in the canon of X-Men and stuff. This is the cold open right before the credits. So before the credits roll, they kind of like imply that she passes out. I actually started writing that note.
Yeah, I thought she like full on like lost consciousness as she was bumping into the table, like just from being overwhelmed.
And when it comes back from the opening credits, we find out that I don't know if the table getting knocked over wasn't as dramatic as because I feel like a full 8-foot table falling over would be a pretty big deal for an award ceremony.
I don't, because this school didn't care that their principal almost got killed by a scoreboard.
Fair point.
This school is like a little nervous about somebody like stuttering over their words. They don't care about property damage at all. They are totally okay with it.
So we find out Jean just kind of stumbled more than anything, bumped into the table, and she did break her trophy. And she comes back pretty quick because the trophy, when it fell on the ground, like the head popped off of the statue. And so she's like, hey, lost my head there for a second. So I was like, John's favorite. She makes a pun and carries on.
I hate it. I hated it so bad.
And she goes on with her speech. It seems to go off without a hitch from that point on. And when people are leaving the auditorium, it's so funny. I said Evan here, and then for the whole episode, I just couldn't remember his code name, Spike. Evan seems to want there to be like a skateboarding team, so he could be an MVP of that. And they're like, no, that's not really happening. Schools never have a skateboarding team.
Right. And didn't we only just in this most recent Olympics get skateboarding or something like that?
Oh, I didn't even realize that. I mean, that's how much...
I think maybe this Olympics, and I could be wrong because I haven't watched the Olympics, but I want to say that's what it was.
That's wild it took that long because, like, whatever you think of the sport, it is pretty physical. I guess maybe they're having a hard time, like, figuring out how to, like, regulate it or score it or something, maybe? I don't know.
The problem is every single skateboarder would fail the drug test.
They had to make an exception for these certain categories.
Yeah, literally there's an asterisk in every single Olympic skateboard record.
Yeah, listen, this is not performance enhancing. This is just the norm.
Yeah. If anything, they're going to have less energy. So.
Right. And curiously, Lance takes Kitty to chemistry, and she doesn't seem to resist.
Yeah, that stood out to me as well. I was like kind of surprised by that one.
I know that this is a high school drama. I just can't, I guess for me personally, maybe it's because I'm older now, I can't get it out of my head that he tried to murder you earlier a few times, right?
Yeah.
So, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, literally the previous semester, and then outed your entire crew at the fucking soccer game.
Maybe a couple weeks ago almost or something. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, dude. Hormones are the most dangerous thing to a superhero, I guess.
There we go. And Scott finds Jean at the end of the stage and kind of confronts her about like the episode she had, and she kind of brushes it off and asks if Scott's going to Duncan's party, which I refuse to believe that she didn't know that wouldn't be a weird thing to say.
Yeah, like she knows they're not friendly. Like it's not like they pretend to be friends in front of her or anything. Like they're definitely aggro around each other. So
and now we know that she can hear thoughts.
Even without that, yeah, though, right. Like that's a fucking read the room scenario.
So she's like, oh, unless he didn't invite you, well, I'm inviting you. Which also, if I mean, everybody listening to this is probably old enough, but in case someone's kid is listening to this, that doesn't work that way.
Especially because he's gonna go without her too. It's not like they're even arriving together and he was her ride or something like that.
Yeah, and then we go over to
but she also guilt trips him too.
Yeah,
because she's like, oh yeah, be there for me. It's like, oh, this is gonna go poorly.
I just had a little flashback to a moment where I was seeing someone and I got invited over to her place where she also invited her ex but didn't tell either of us.
Oh, that's actually, not awkward.
Actually, kind of funny. I don't know why, but
her name was Jean and she was also a redhead.
Right? Yeah, also a telepath. It's kind of synergistic. We were over watching the Olympics. I don't know how it came back to that. Somebody's going to do the math and figure out which relationship that was. Anyway, that was a while ago.
I want to know who cares that much to do the math from.
Yo, I don't know anymore. People on the internet figure out weird things.
If we have fans that care that much, I think we've hit like a champagne problem.
Yay. So then we get to the chemistry class, and my note, even though it's kind of reductive, is pretty accurate. Kitty laughs at Lance's fart joke.
Yep.
Because they're making stink bombs. I thought they were joking about it initially, but we find out that's really what they're doing.
I was not expecting it to actually pay off with them being told they were going to make stink bombs.
Yeah. And so Lance makes a joke about, Blob makes his own stink bombs at night, if you know what I mean. He farts, and only big people have gas, I guess.
Yeah, it felt like the laziest possible joke, and he like leaned into it. It wasn't like, oh, Blob stink bombs. It was like, yeah, he can't help himself. But it's like, just, okay, we got the joke. Stop adding more onto the joke.
I kind of actually, it would have been funnier, I think, if it would have been like the whole Brotherhood, like Toad obviously stinks and stuff. There was a whole thing there. It's like a little nitpicky, but I just thought it was funny. And then I hear someone recite some sort of literary quote, and I was like, this is definitely Beast. He walks in, I was like, that's Beast, right? He's not blue yet, but like, you just, even though his voice sounds nothing like the 92 one, just that his first introduction was a quote, and he walks in and he's like really like stocky. I was like, that's Beast. And then he immediately says like, I'm Professor McCoy or something. I was like, okay.
Yep. I also love how this guy is the chemistry teacher. He's reciting literature, and he references that he's also the phys ed teacher.
Oh yeah. Or
it's like they give him three things that are pretty disparate from each other.
Yeah. Although where I went to school, random teachers were also like coaches of random sports just because like budgetary. So I kind of get that.
Oh yeah. Our AP history teacher should not have been our football our football coach should not have been our AP history teacher, but that's what happened.
I'm not going to call anybody specific in my school system because we had a very small school system, and I know people I went to high school listen to this, and they will put too much together and let those people know. But
Again,
know what we're talking about.
I'm glad to hear you think we have that many people from your life listening to this show.
I know, because they messaged me about it.
Oh, good.
But they'll know what I'm talking about. We know. Wink, wink. Anyway, then I'm just going to call him Beast. Gets straight to the point. He's like, we're just going to cut to the chase. We're making stink bombs. And the whole class cheers. I guess that's the way to win over your first day as teacher.
Seriously. Like, let the kids do something destructive and they're going to love you.
Yeah. And especially, I don't know if it's the same way with kids nowadays or not, because I don't have any kids that I'm raising, but like,
thank God.
Just in the 90s, doing stuff that's like gross was the popular thing, you know? I know slime's big now.
Dissecting frogs and shit.
Dissecting frogs, but also like stink bombs and like the garbage pail kids, you know, like things that were just like nasty. Because it was like, you know, I feel like now like slime has like glitter in it and stuff. You know, I don't.
Yeah, like people making slime, it's the equivalent of like gack and phloem. It's not actually gross.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think even
it's like fucking Orbeez at this point.
Right. And I think even gack in our era was meant to be gross, and it just kind of got more and more homogenized, you know?
Oh, yeah, of course it did, because literally one of the selling features is if you press the gack into the plastic case the right way, it made a fart noise.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I still like that.
It's the simple things, right?
Right? Little pleasures. So definitely Beast becomes a popular chemistry teacher. Back at the mansion, Scott is running down the hallway on his way out. Kitty just like...
After checking his hair.
Oh, yeah. And Kitty is casually walking through walls, and Scott almost trips on her, and he has a good point. He's like, gotta be careful. It's like, yeah.
So I love that Kitty will phase through a wall and just be oblivious to everything. Like, and we see this again in the next episode too. But she's phasing. She could stay phased for a half a second to figure out what's around her, and instead she just instantly unphases and bumps into people. It's like, you have the opportunity to never be in people's way, and you are fucking it up.
Yeah, and Scott, I guess the joke, though, is that Scott he keeps running into the character. I guess it's to remind us of all these characters in the first episode, and he doesn't call out a lot of them. We see I can't remember her name, the wolf girl.
Well, first off, Kitty does mention she still stinks from the experiment.
Oh, yes. Yeah, because so I guess it's supposed to also, like, move us through time to like a few hours later to after school's out. Outside by his car, Iceman, aka Bobby Drake, is leaning against the car trying to impress another girl who I'm guessing.
Which you still haven't figured out who that is?
I don't know who that is, yeah.
Nope, not going to tell you till you figure it out.
But he does call out Drake.
Yes.
Like, because of leaving his ice everywhere, which is another nice little detail of like, you know, we just assume Iceman, you know, like when he creates those, when I was a kid, it was like he created those like ice paths everywhere and stuff, and they just kind of like go away. But I guess this is kind of very quietly implying that there's like a custodial element to it that he's learned over the time, right? Because here he was using it and it didn't clean up, and Scott slipped on it and like landed on his ass.
I think it's Bobby, because he was showing off to the girl making the little ballerina out of ice, and I think he just is very careless with it, and it just hasn't melted yet. Yeah. But the part with Wolfsbane that you neglected to mention, she's also chasing one of the other ones, and I think that was Cannonball who she was chasing.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
I think. I'm not 100%, but I think it was. And then keen-eyed viewers will recognize who Bobby was chatting with that Rod has not picked up on, and I kind of love this being our own little dumb mystery. I did notice that there was, on the X-Men Evolution wiki on Fandom, there was reference to the ice ballerina being a little bit similar to the ice rose that he made for Rogue in the original X-Men movie.
It wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for, you know, writers to be kind of sharing details or ideas, you know? You just never know what's going to happen, because was it them? Yeah, I think Steven said like they were having sushi once and they hashed out details about something, about like a part of a season or something like that. And you know, you and I both know like that kind of stuff happens out here all the time. Like we just go have lunch and then like a set of ideas for something that gets, you know, executed years later happens. So who knows? It might have been like a little bit like, hey, could he do this? Yeah, and then everybody runs with their version of that idea. Oh yeah, and he also falls down the stairs on that. Like this dude takes a beating. Like he ran to Kitty
he's
upstairs,
having a rough night.
And he fell down the stairs. Once again, hormones, right? Yeah. Like the worst thing for a superhero. And then slides out to his car. I kind of wonder too, I guess we'll find out what the version of Bobby this is in this one, but I kind of wonder if like Bobby was implying that was his car because he was leaning up against it so confidently and it was just like out in the driveway.
I think if you're one of the the kids at the Institute, that's Scott's car.
Scott, yeah, right.
I think it was possibly like, oh, I'm such good friends with Scott that I could lean up against his car and he's not going to get mad at it.
Yeah, that's true.
Because like all those new kids, they got to know who the one person with the convertible is, you know? Like, you know that Wolverine will stab you if you touch his motorcycle, and Scott is not going to freak out if, you know, you're near his car. So,
or maybe this is the learning moment. So then we get to Duncan's party. Duncan, I guess, is showing off to Jean, but clearly also displaying that he doesn't know how soccer works. Because he, like, tosses the ball by hand.
And he literally has it hiked to him. It's not just like it's a throw. He literally calls for a football hike on it. So I was actually genuinely curious, was this a scenario where they wrote football in the script, it went to whatever the animation studio was, and then they added in the dialogue of Jean like yelling at him that it was American football or something like that? Because I don't remember seeing her lips move when she said that. I feel like that was like an off-camera shout.
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, that'd be a good fix if there was a mess up. Yeah, because he tosses a soccer ball and then out the window. So it wasn't even like he was trying to pass to somebody. He was like trying to make like a field goal.
You're throwing that angle, dude? Like, that is the most perfect curveball throw to go up and go that far on a soccer ball. So
yeah, and it goes outside the house and hits Scott in the head just as he's getting out of his car. And he goes back in and they have that conversation about like, hey, this isn't football. And then Risty's like, not where you are, not for you guys, but where I'm from, it is. There's a good possibility that might have been like the quick fix instead of replacing an entire scene.
It just felt very, very weird that the football player was throwing a soccer ball.
Yeah, or they were leaning into like how dense he was.
Yeah, or I guess it was like, yeah, they were celebrating because that was, you know, Jean's MVP sport, but it was a weird shot. That's all.
And I had here, Rogue is definitely drinking quote unquote water because Rogue wants to leave and Risty's like, why? He's like, well, I'm done celebrating like Jean's popularity. And she takes a chug of like the water bottle. I'm like, yeah, that's definitely water that she's throwing back.
Well, she also gives the like, people like me, you know, don't hang out with people like that kind of scenario too. Like she definitely feels out of place being there. It's like she's popular in spite of herself and she doesn't want to be around the popular kids.
Yeah, and she kind of tracks Scott as he walks in, and Risty calls it out that she has a crush. But Rogue insists on leaving, and Risty's like, okay, well, I'll go with you to make sure you're okay, but also I'm going to be mad if I miss something. We find out later why she left with Rogue. And
we find out the next episode.
Oh, yeah, next episode.
Yeah, but don't jump ahead, Ron. We only spoil the existing episode.
Right. When I had mentioned in the episode with Steven, I was like, I feel like there was something more happening with those two. And he was like, there is, just not what you think. He was
right. And I had had that spoiled for me already, so that's why I was laughing when you said it too.
Obviously, he was right because he wrote it. This is interesting because like at the time, it's like, okay, I guess they're just being good friends or something, but that was more than that.
And then I wrote down Scott versus Duncan, angry ping pong.
Yeah, I had Duncan and Scott have the most aggro ping pong match.
Like taking people out type shit. This would be a great Instagram reel to watch in like real life.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me, what was it, Balls of Fury? Remember that movie?
Never watched. I know the movie though.
You know, if you were a fan of like the kickball one and stuff, it's right along the same lines, you know. Although thinking back, I haven't watched this since. There's probably some stuff that didn't age well because they go to like China or something to train part of it, and that can't have turned out well that time period. But
no, it cannot have.
But this is one of those matches where, like, in this show, without her telepathic powers, Jean, you know, can sense the pheromones in the air or the testosterone. Because up until this, you don't know if she's like privy to what's going on between those two. Now it's very clear because she even like calls it out. She's like, "Come on, guys," and then she stops the ball.
Telekinetically.
Yeah, telekinetically. And I guess it was subtle enough that other people didn't notice. He was like, enough.
But this, I think the only way that this works is that Duncan is an idiot and he actually doesn't realize the ball got stopped in midair before she grabbed it.
Yeah, and everybody else is drunk, are very well hydrated because they're all drinking water.
Super hydrated.
So Jean takes Duncan away to go yell at him, but then she starts getting inundated with other people's thoughts. I thought they were going to go to a different path than this because the first thing she hears is, what does she even see in him? I'm like, okay, let's do it.
Right, but she also says like a pretty definitive line. She says, "Don't make me choose between you and my friend."
Yeah, she starts to friend zone Scott there. We'll see the completion of that later.
And then she starts hearing a bunch of people, and then she runs off.
She runs outside to, even though this is not the mansion, another balcony.
They love their balconies.
Yeah, as you put it out to Steve, and he acknowledged, he was like, it's just a great place to have people congregate outside of a hallway.
Yeah.
Right. Scott's already out there, probably trying to figure out what he's going to do with his life.
He's going to just keep losing at ping pong. That's what he's going to do.
And I say he spooks Jean, but he was already out there. I guess she was still spooked.
I would not say he spooked her. He just reacted, and then she's so in her own freak out world that she telekinetically just pushes him off the balcony.
Which I made a note that she basically just force pushed him. It looked like something like a Jedi would do. It's like, huh. And then he went off the balcony. And
they do a great job in this show. I've said it before, so it's sorry if it's redundant to the listeners. They utilize the commercial breaks so well in this show.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And a lot of it is with people falling off cliffs.
She reacts fast enough that she catches Scott telekinetically right before he hits the water, and he's like relieved. But then I think Duncan comes out.
Yeah, she saves him when he's like within arm's reach of the pool. Duncan comes outside, and you hear him splash into the water.
That's kind of funny. And then Duncan yells at him. He's like, "What do you do at pool?" And he has that like 90s one-liner. He's like testing your chlorine levels or something. I guess he's in a better mood now. Because before he was getting ready to like kill him with the ping pong paddle.
I feel like he should be in a worse mood now. His best friend just tried to murder him.
Right. And he's like soaked. Like that's the end of the party. Like they're not going to stay there at that point. Back at the mansion, Jean and Scott are getting home and
she blames him.
Yeah.
She's like, way to surprise me, jerk.
It's like, I was standing there. Yeah, they're kind of arguing when Xavier appears and asks what happened. And then Kirk just kind of appears behind him. Risty and Rogue walk into the lobby. And it kind of catches everybody off guard. And Rogue actually accuses everyone else about being rude. But clearly, unscheduled visits from outsiders aren't allowed for obvious reasons. And I forget who gets caught first.
You had three instances. You have Nightcrawler almost gets caught, and it's just lucky that he is behind Xavier enough that he could hit his little image inducer. And then Kitty phases in, and there's no way that she would have been able to get behind Risty without having walked through a wall. And then Logan pops his claws, sees just in time, and turns around with the apple still on his claws. And he's like, well, yeah, I guess I'm not the only one who doesn't follow rules.
Logan's was my favorite because there's like it's either a Family Guy or a Simpsons meme that was something similar where there's someone that walks in, grabs something, and just nopes right out in one motion.
Oh, it's Homer Simpson when he sees, or Grandpa Simpson when he sees Bart working at the burlesque house.
Yes, yeah. He puts the hat on. The same energy. I love it. Like he comes in, like he stab like an apple or something.
Yeah,
like grabs it and then
stabs the apple and then immediately turns around.
Like, okay, keep going. Maybe she didn't see that. At this point, I was like, oh, this is probably Mystique.
Oh, that was your tip off?
There was something like too much happened that there was no reaction to.
Like Risty was not shocked enough for the near misses kind of scenario.
Like the closest we got was she was like, when Kitty faced through the wall, she's like, "Where did you come from?" And it's like, "I'm just quiet" or something. I was like, maybe, but like people have been startled by far less in this show. And then everything. She clearly saw Logan like stab the apple. Right.
So one of the comments online, and spoiler, we get a reveal about this next episode. Sorry. But people are saying online, if that was Mystique transformed, unless there is something with her new powers from the season 1 finale that changed her scent, Wolverine should have known that was her.
That's a good point. Yeah. Huh. Or is that the reason? I don't know.
So most people are just saying he should have known. Mm-hmm. I'm adding the additional, unless there was a change from the power manipulation.
I'll bet that was part of either directly or implied conversation that I kind of half read and stopped when the season 1 finale got spoiled for me, that her power sets were expanded in ways that kind of covered a bunch of different grounds. Yeah. So
Risty leaves. Yeah. And then we get Professor X kind of scolding Rogue of like, yeah, there's a reason visits need to be scheduled.
Yeah. And then Rogue calls out Jean for reading her mind. Jean's like, I didn't mean to.
Right.
We didn't even hear it.
Well, Rogue says internally, and maybe that was your audio because it did pop up on mine, but it was like, oh, you wouldn't treat Jean that way. And Jean responds by saying, oh, he doesn't treat me different than anybody else. And that's when Rogue is like, what the fuck, dude?
Yes. Which, fair.
Yeah.
And so we go to another part of the mansion a little bit later, and Xavier's talking to Jean about controlling her powers, and that it may be that they're growing faster now than she can like learn them.
Yep. Or it's just so much fatigue.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. It was more of a fatigue thing. I guess we just weren't made aware of like their previous lessons or conversations and stuff, because that kind of makes it feel like she's been actively containing something since she arrived at the Institute. And I don't think we've touched on that yet.
No, it's we've seen more of the like control conversations we've talked about with Scott or with Kurt or with Spike. We've not really talked about it with Jean up until this point.
Yeah, so I guess this is the introduction of that. Is this like, you know, all the stress finally get to her. I guess it's funny because it's a stressful time from a positive experience, because it's not like anything. She's not going through like the same sort of challenges like Boom Boom was last episode, where that's like she's busy because she's doing well. Like she's this MVP. She's on the soccer team. She just mentions in this conversation with Xavier she's going to try out for track and field. The thing they're really looking up for, so I guess that's why she's tired. And then the next day,
and it's like, cool, I don't need help, I'm just gonna get a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
But it's like, are you really gonna get a good night's sleep if the next thing you're doing is trying out for track the next day?
Right. Or even sleeping in a mansion full of people that know you and are probably talking about you because of all the stuff that happened in the last 24 hours.
And don't forget all these new students who are probably all psychopaths from what we've seen so far. Like, let's be real. The original class, even including Evan, who has destroyed ceilings, are the better behaved group in the school right now.
That's true. Yeah, because the first guest we ran into was Boom Boom, and she was just kind of a loose cannon.
And then fucking Wolfsbane has just been like chasing people throughout the school. There's been fireballs shot overhead. It's not the healthiest like group of people so far.
And so the next day, Beast as Coach Beast at the track and field tryouts, I guess he's the sole anything physical activity at the school, because we don't see any other coaches out there. And it's the people we know there are Duncan, Scott, and Jean. Scott and Duncan are kind of like going toe to toe, like trying to compete with each other.
Yeah, they start going back and forth. Scott throws a javelin further than Duncan. Duncan does the pole vault better than Scott. And then they're racing on the track, and Duncan decides to elbow Scott in the middle of it and knocks his glasses off.
Yeah, he like tucks and rolls his glasses. When his glasses fall off, I think all of us are expecting that to be the out moment, because that's very similar to other moments that Scott's been like out in the past.
Okay, have you seen the reel of what happens when the track runner is going down and the little kid runs across the track by accident?
No.
Okay, there's a reel on Instagram. If it comes across my feed, I'll reshare it on the appropriate week for this going live. But there is a kid who runs out, and this dude tries to not murder this kid, but he just runs him over because he's going so fast he can't stop. Yeah. And it's just like, I was just picturing that in my head as I was watching the animation go down.
Yeah. Then we see Beast kind of gives a look where he knows what's going on.
Yeah.
And but he plays it cool. He doesn't like make a scene out of it, but he does tell Duncan he's off the team. Like,
yeah, he straight up is like, hit the showers, you're off. Yeah.
Jean is, I guess it's the javelin she's throwing. It had the sharp end on it. And she's starting to get overwhelmed again with all the voices around her and stuff. And now it's affecting her telekinesis. Yeah. And so the javelin just starts torpedoing towards a bunch of people at like the starting line of the track.
Yeah, it's Kitty, and then one of the notes was the girl Sydney, who was a bully to Kitty in her introductory episode, happens to be at this school now.
I didn't put that together.
I did not recognize it. It's a note thanks to the fandom wiki. I cannot take credit for that one.
I wonder if that's going to be a storyline. They just need another character model.
But yeah, so luckily Lance sees that this javelin is hurtling towards everybody, and he does like a little tiny earthquake and saves everybody's life.
Oh yeah, because they fall. Yeah, so I don't understand what happened between these episodes. So I guess it kind of makes more sense that this episode happened after the one it did than reversed, because he was still a villain last episode, right? He's still a villain in every episode. I think Kitty just doesn't give a shit yet. Gotcha. Yeah, I mean, because it's still after the cauldron. I almost called it the crucible again. Yeah. So, like, yeah, I don't know. Fucking people date dumb people, you know? That's true. I want to get started on that.
Yeah.
He could have subtweeted a bunch of people in here. And then we see Beast help Scott up with his glasses. He doesn't make a big deal out of it, but
he helps Scott up with the glasses before the javelin gets tossed.
Jean gets overwhelmed. Then he helps him with his glasses. Then the javelin gets tossed. Then the girls get saved.
Then Jean starts telekinetically throwing the shot put balls.
Yeah.
Which Hank catches 2 of them with his hands.
Yeah.
Those are fucking heavy. I don't know if you've ever done shot put, but those being thrown full force at you aren't something that you should be able to like just catch casually.
I have not, because I can't easily pick up those. So exactly.
Oh, shoot. Yeah, you could leave this in. Literally, as we're recording this, we just got the notification that Stephen Gordon was resharing our reel from his appearance on last week's episode.
Oh, nice. There should be another. Are we using the other clip too?
Yeah, I'm going to throw the other one up later this week.
There should be another clip. And if I find more, I just hadn't. I was at Adobe Max when I was editing this episode. And so.
How dare you? How dare you? How dare you do stuff other than this show that doesn't make us money, Rod? Fucking selfish.
So I was only able to find a couple clips that we had mentioned we were going to post. So there's probably more. I'll probably dig a little bit more of those. But
then Scott dodges one and then shoots another one out of the sky that was going to kill Duncan, and it just lands through the principal's window, and that never gets addressed again. I am so curious about this principal scenario right now.
I think it adds another penny in my bucket of like, this might be Senator Kelly, because he keeps experiencing these like odd things happening, you know.
I still am on the side of like, there's got to be a powered person. There's got to be a powered person.
I could see that too, though, because if it doesn't faze him all that much, you know, he didn't like scream when it happened. I mean, he was shocked by it, obviously, but like,
you just want him to scream like a bitch. Just like,
what's the thing? I guess we're still getting used to this universe, even though we're in the second season, of like, how normal is normal here? You know, because like they have earthquakes and stuff, and that doesn't faze people.
They were cool with the scoreboard falling, cool with shot put balls randomly flying in through windows, like Blob almost having like a manslaughter moment during a food fight. Like, granted, they don't know there are superpowered beings in this world yet, but it is not a healthy world.
Right. Although, I would say, like, as of, October 2023, I'm not sure if any of us would notice if any of that stuff was happening based on things and just everything that's happened in the last few years.
You mean the fact that we've literally had aliens confirmed in some degree and nobody gives a shit?
Yeah, and like 3 times. Like, it wasn't just once. It was like every year they're like, hey guys, just reminding you they're aliens. And they're like, yeah, okay, whatever.
Yeah, they're called UFPs or whatever the fuck they are.
Yeah. I'm still trying to like pay my grocery bill. Anyway, all that is also
you're like a McDonald's cheeseburger costs $5. I don't give a fuck.
Yo, you know what the most disappointing thing is? I don't really love Taco Bell, but every once in a while Mexican pizza hits the spot. And I just remember, I knew that it was not this way anymore because I've eaten there since, obviously. But like, I just remember in the 90s being able to like go to Taco Bell and eat like a king for $5. My one combo meal with 2 things and a drink was like $10. I don't know when that happened. That's insane. Anyway, all this exhausts Jean. She passes out, so all the chaos finally stops. Kitty and Scott rush Jean to the mansion, to their Met Bay area. Logan takes Scott to another room while Xavier probes Jean's mind. He's in there, and it's like a mess. It's kind of similar to how we saw in 92, like when things are really confusing in people's heads. Like, there's just a mess of images.
It actually did a really good job, because you and I have kind of talked about, one of the things that is a little weird in this show is the transitions between scenes. And sometimes it's like the flash of moments, and we don't know if it's like, oh, is that like a psychic flash? And then we realize it actually is just their way of doing a transition here. I felt like this is like taking those flashes, but slowing them down dramatically.
Yeah, so you can kind of see them. And it was a lot of stuff that had happened earlier in the day. It was basically the noise that she's had to deal with.
Yeah, it was very much this episode. It wasn't like, you know, in 92 where Wolverine's memories could have been like, you know, shit from 40 years prior and stuff like that. It was very much, oh, her day really, really sucked the past, like, 48 hours. So. And
then this is where the title comes to play. She has like a surge, like a power surge, and knocks Xavier into the wall. It was kind of like a far less lethal but similar energy to like what Jean Grey does in the X-Men movies when she like eviscerates Xavier. Like, she just like kind of explodes out the room.
And also like to the point of just like decimating the walls and stuff like that too. Like, it's not just the room she's in. Like, it literally knocks a hole in and knocks Scott and Wolverine on their asses.
Yeah, who are presumably walking down the hallway on the outside, and they're like, ooh.
I bet you Scott was standing right behind that door. Right. He was not moving quickly.
And I thought that meant that she had destroyed. I didn't know that they were upstairs. I thought there may be a ground level or something, and she just had destroyed that wing like they have done in 92 and stuff. But then the very next scene, we see the X-kids are all in their uniforms, and they're waiting downstairs, and they're hearing a noise from upstairs, and Xavier and Logan bring Scott down, and they're like, what's going on up there? It's like, that was upstairs? And it's
I do not understand the layout of the Institute. Full-fledged, I want to see one of those like crossed cut through, you see the building from the side, like, you know, old school Avengers Mansion style. I want to see what the layout of this building is.
It has like portals to other dimensions and stuff.
No, we don't have magic on it yet.
And
I don't know if we get her in this show.
That magic.
Yeah, magic with a K, not the concept of magic.
Yeah. And so it's almost Looney Tunes-ish, because you just hear this like abstract noise coming from a distance of like destruction happening.
Just shit crashing all around.
Yeah. And then the kids are all discussing like what they could possibly do. And Rogue offers to, like, you know, I don't know what the other word is, like absorb Jean. I just think absorb is like the word I've been using for this, or like, I guess, is that how we're describing when she offers to do that to be? She does a lot in the show.
I would say drains, but I don't like the phrasing of that now that we're saying it out loud.
Yeah, and also it's not like complete. Like she just said, like just enough to take her down a peg. But then Xavier brings up a good point. She's like, if she can't handle it, you definitely can't handle it.
Which, valid.
Yeah.
Like, we saw what happened when she absorbed Storm. Like, she can't handle a power overload.
And they're, you know, as much as Rogue doesn't like Jean, you know, they have established that Jean and Scott are the more trained of everyone here anyway, and Rogue is one of the newest, you know, people here. So, like, yeah, and she's not in a great headspace either. So Scott realizes that he's close enough to Jean. Either that or he's, like, way too confident. He's like, well, what if she does that and then I give her something to focus on? I was like, ooh, bold statement to make. My dude, okay. And Xavier's like, yeah, that checks out. Let's do that.
You just made it so inappropriate with your phrasing, Rod.
What?
Just how you said it just felt so uncomfortable.
That's my gift.
It is. Yes, it is.
And so,
although this show, you get way less insinuation than you did in the previous one. So at least you've matured.
Yeah. They're also a lot less naive in this show, you know? So when they're supposed to be like a double entendre, they make it on purpose. 92 was close enough to the 80s where it was just general awkwardness. Be like, wait, what do they mean by that? And this one's like, no, this one they're banging. That one they're not. Like earlier in this episode, Rogue is throwing back bottles of water. Like, yeah, that's definitely what she's doing in that scene. So upstairs, my note here is Gina's going Phoenix when the team goes in. She's not quite, but she is very similar to what I feel like we see before with Phoenix and Jean.
And this is where we reference the thumbnail where, you know, the imagery, the only reason I wouldn't say going Phoenix because there's no fire in it, but it very much gives me like Wanda Maximoff vibes. Like there's very much the Scarlet Witch feel of like everything is dark and spinning around, and if you get too close to something, you're going to get your face sliced open by like a random, like, I don't know, like a scalpel because they're in a med bay. Like That's really true. Isn't the safest spot to be.
Yeah. And upstairs, I guess, so you might get thrown off too.
Yeah. But yeah, so they're there and they're like, all right, let's go. And I put Evan extremes into battle because he like...
with a skateboard.
Yeah, I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with this kid?
That was for the poster. I don't know if they made posters of this moment, but that pose he had, that was like the Tony Hawk pose, right? Of like extreme sports.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was definitely the same pose on like Tony Hawk Pro Skater 2. No doubt. And then Nightcrawler teleports Rogue directly into the middle of everything.
Was she meant it when she said she was going to go in, and I don't know a better way to phrase this, so we're just going to go with what you mentioned from me earlier, but also I couldn't figure a better way. Rogue gets a little bit of a touch in, enough to get Jean to calm down a little bit, and then Scott can talk to her, but it's Rogue that answers.
Right. It was like a part of her consciousness was in Rogue to the point where she was actually talking through Rogue, which we haven't seen before.
But then as they keep talking, both Jean and Rogue start talking to Scott.
Right, and the audio on their voices was overlapping at the same time. And then Scott is talking to Rogue as Jean, and they like got close. I legit thought he was going to kiss her.
Me too.
I was like, that's one weird, and I'm happy they didn't do it. But I definitely got the vibe that it's like, oh, that could have been a choice they were going to make.
It was the moment how close they got, and also the music. Like everything just like kind of swelled up to like now was going to be a big romantic moment. And yeah, I'm glad they didn't do that. So Jean calls out Scott's name when she finally like realizes it's him there, and she comes down off of the whatever that was, surge, I guess.
The power surge, the title of the episode. Yeah.
And Rogue is like unpossessed, I guess, at that point.
It was funny because he debates if he's going to run away from Rogue because she's obviously like in pain from the experience. But he's like, oh, they're holding on to her. I'm now going to run to Jean.
And Rogue is a little sad because even though Jean was speaking through her, it seems like Rogue was aware of what was going on. So she got to see Scott that close talking to her as Jean.
Yeah, she got to feel it, and I think this is where, if part of what your power is as Rogue is to absorb somebody else's powers, and Jean has the telepathy, so she's experiencing it too, like almost the way that like we would say just a person who considers themselves an empath would. I think she actually felt those emotions that Jean was feeling in that time too.
Oh yeah. So I don't know if they'll touch on this later, but Rogue might be the only one that knows if Jean actually has feelings for Scott. They're just hiding them. Interesting.
I think she probably knows better than Scott does at this point.
That sucks.
Yeah.
That's a love triangle, man, that you could only do in superhero things. Is like if the girl that you don't have feelings for but has a crush on you actually objectively knows if the girl you have a crush on has feelings for you. That's a CW show.
I mean, this was on WB, which became CW, so you're not wrong.
So Scott goes to, this is later on, Scott goes to thank Rogue because he acknowledges how dangerous that was.
Yeah, Rogue is like sitting by a windowsill. She sees Jean like relaxing / posing on a bench outside at the Institute. Yeah.
And Scott's like, why, I don't know why you did that. And Rogue confesses that she realized that Jean would have done the same. And I'm not quite clear. I'm assuming she knew that before absorbing Jean because she did before, but maybe it was made more clear when she absorbed Jean that she like knew objectively that that would be the case.
Well, it starts off with like Scott, is thanking her and checking on her. And, asking why she does it. And Rogue was like, oh, it was nothing. Like, she tries to brush it off. I don't remember if there's been a moment where somebody actually has, like, turned that around and been like, no, it actually was. Like, you made a difference and you saved somebody's life. I think we've all been there, especially, like, younger years where it's like, I don't know if it's imposter syndrome or what this specific phrasing would be for it, but like you do a thing and you almost are like scared to get the recognition for doing it. And that's what it felt like Rogue was here. Like she didn't want to accept the praise for having done the right thing.
Yeah, no, I get that. There's a lot of times actively like, just don't tell anybody.
Yeah. And then Scott's like, yeah, it was. And he's like, tell me why you did it. And that's when she was like, well, she would have done the same thing for me. And then Scott, I think this is what Rogue has needed to hear, because she still, even though she's a part of the family, she still feels like an outsider within the X-Men. We would all do it for you. It was actually a really great, like, everybody gets a redemption moment here. Like, as much as shitty teenagers can be dumbasses to each other sometimes, like this was like, oh no, they are actually a family. Like it was a very cool moment with that.
This has been an interesting series now that we're a season and some change into it with Rogue, to see Rogue in the context of not having to fend off a horny Cajun. And I kind of say that jokingly but kind of seriously, because in 92 like half her personality was trying to deflect Gambit.
Yeah, she doesn't have her people yet. And I mean, that's kind of goes back to the 90s stereotype of the goth girl or the person who's buying Hot Topic stuff before Hot Topic has Funko Pops. It was a different like group. And all the other kids, even Kurt, they all look like the regular kid, even when he has his, image inducer on. She looks like the goth girl.
The episode wraps up with Jean saying, I smell roses, and it's Scott. And he's like, yep, too bad they're from Duncan. And then he tosses her like a crumpled up piece of paper.
Which, here's the only thing. He didn't need to open it to realize it was from Duncan. It was pretty obvious it was from Duncan.
I just assumed it was one of those just like folding cards that was on there, but he just like crumpled it just out of spite. Or maybe either way, same energy, same outcome.
There definitely was a little bit of spite to it. But then you get the cool moment with them where she's like thanking him and you know me better than anyone has or ever will be, something along those lines, which was what he said to her via Rogue.
Oh, okay.
It was literally his direct quote shot back at him from Gene.
Okay, so she was aware. So she does remember, because he asked her like how much you remembered. She was like,
yeah. Sorry, I jumped over that entire part.
Yeah, no, but that makes, I didn't realize that was the same quote, but now that makes sense, because my note just said, oh, well, she friend zoned him. But it's sweeter that she quoted him back, so like it's the start of something now instead of like her putting a boundary on it. Yeah, and then that was I guess it was like a tease of what maybe might become a Phoenix-ish thing. I'm gonna assume they don't do the Phoenix Saga again, but I don't know.
Well, the only thing I'll say about the phrasing of again, just got to remember, the only Phoenix Saga stuff that we've had at this time was the actual comic itself, X-Men 92, and then when did X3 come out? I have to look that up. That came out in 2006 in the movies, so it would have only been the comic in 92 as your Phoenix references at that point.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe we don't know. I guess we'll find out. We don't know. We're watching through this with fresh eyes, so.
And we didn't have the awful reference to, Brett Ratner's garbage direction of The Last Stand.
But at this point, everyone on Earth knows my perspective on any of the Fox X-Men movies.
You don't like any of them?
Only one that kind of liked was... I did like Logan, but once again,
if you didn't like Logan, we probably shouldn't be doing this show.
But that was the most separated, and it also kind of like denied the rest of the series in a way, because it was kind of unclear on what timeline that was. And then my second favorite was Days of Future Past, because it literally erased all the other movies before that I didn't like.
Do not watch the Rogue cut, because there's an alternate cut that keeps it within that continuity.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if it makes you happy, that's great. I'm just glad we're beyond it now, because I did not enjoy those at the time. And anybody that says like they remember me liking it, you didn't know me. You wrote that in, because I did not. I was pretty outward with my opinions on what I thought about those movies. It was mostly that even before the movies came out, it was like, why are they in black leather? Like that.
I mean, that was because it was the 90s and it was just after Blade.
Yeah, Blade and The Matrix. I feel like The Matrix, was a good movie that is like what I say about like Dave Matthews and music fans and stuff. Like, good band, good movie, ruined everything else after that, because everybody tried to copy it. But
because the black leather happened in the movie before the Grant Morrison run of New X-Men, which is when they started doing leather in the comics.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it was mainly that, as a kid growing up, like the 92 series and the few comics I kind of saw, like the whole point was their distinguishable outfits, like have you played the game on like TikTok or Instagram or something with the filter where they just show you the color palette of the characters and you guess the characters? And I feel like at worst people get over half of them because that's how good the palettes are,
Or the ones where it's the rectangles and it's height based on color patterns.
Yeah. So anyway, as we'll find out how that all ties into this crazy whatever the multiverse stuff is going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I really dug this episode, whether or not it does go in the route of the Dark Phoenix. I kind of, and please do not spoil this in the comments before I say it, I kind of want there to be that love triangle. I want this show to be the one show where we could get Rogue in a relationship with Scott. I want to see how that story gets told. Whether or not that's what they ended up giving us, I don't know, and I don't want it spoiled for us. But having watched it play out the way that it has so far, I will be sad if we don't get it by the finale of this series.
I want that from an interesting story point. Me as a person doesn't want that because I get anxiety about stuff that is critical to storytelling. Whenever I'm watching a Goofy movie, I can't stand the part where Goofy finds out that Max changed the map. That breaks my heart. I usually skip it unless I'm in the theater and I can't. I just don't like that conflict. I know it's necessary for the storytelling. I don't know what it does to something in my brain.
So you should never read any of the What If books, because it's what if Gwen Stacy doesn't die and Peter does instead? And you're just they get to the bridge scene and you just start having an anxiety attack, I feel like.
Yeah, it's just, I was like, no, I would, Max, he's your dad. Anyway, I'll put the asterisk on this. I like this episode in the story, the series of what it's telling. Maybe by itself, it wasn't the most exciting, but it was definitely a part of a larger narrative that I'm excited to kind of see.
Yeah, and I think what X-Men 92 started to lose a little bit in its latter seasons because of the rules from Fox of not having season-long stories and stuff like that we're getting a pretty clear continuity for at least the main X kids right now.
Yeah. Jean's still playing soccer. It didn't like change till like she died and then became the MVP or something.
A posthumous MVP would be so dark.
Well, it's just because, like, even though I don't remember all the episode mix-up when I was a kid, I do remember there being a couple episodes of when they aired out of order. Like, didn't she just die?
Oh, yeah, where she died and then she was back. And then because of the airing order, her, like, memorial happened a season later and she was alive again and shit. Yeah.
So, at least there's not that. But,
yeah.
Any other thoughts?
No, we still got one whole episode to go through tonight.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Speaking of...
Also, fucking Discord just wants to not work properly, so that's always fun.
Right. Yeah, there's a phone not... I guess they have to be needing to do a phone update they haven't pushed out through or something. I
literally hit update at the start of the Rod, end the episode.
Thanks for joining us. Is there a tease for next week or is that a leftover?
Oh, no, that was for... Fuck! Well, okay. Hey, Rod, we played our favorite game of John fucked up the script and you found it.
No, it's fine. The tease is we're going to be back. Anyway, if you have any thoughts...
It's the worst tease ever.
Make sure to drop them into the comments for either the YouTube upload or official Instagram post about this episode. If you like what you heard, we'd appreciate a rating on the podcast app you're choosing. Find us at Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and CastBox. We're still counting down the days of CastBox.
Are we? Are we?